Welcome to another episode of the Operator's Table. I'm Cris Morgado. Today we're joined by Andy Horrow, a veteran CPG operator and founder of Second Seed Partners, advising founders on go-to-market, retail velocity, and profitable growth. We will unpack Andy's origin story, what's working inside the brands he supports, and the frictions he's seeing across the category. Andy, welcome. Where are you calling from today?
Thank you. Calling from sunny and not so cold Chicago today.
Good. Okay. That makes a change, I suppose. I'm really glad to have you here. And I guess to start things off, can you give us, our listeners, a snapshot of Second Seed Partners? So who you help and what you focus on?
Sure. So Second Seat Partners is designed to be the co-pilot or the wingman to a founding group, to a small to mid-sized business, to help an entrepreneur or an operating group scale their business. And the idea behind it is that myself and my colleagues were really battle tested within the consumer products world. We've been working at big companies and mid-sized companies and small companies, and we know the battleground areas, and we know the hiccups that companies go through to succeed. And we want to position ourselves as the wingman or the co-pilot, or taking the second seat next to them to help them scale their businesses.
Okay, that's fantastic. So I guess for our listeners today, just to give a little bit of an understanding of what's going to happen today, we'll talk a little bit about the origin story, what's working versus friction, channels, tech, goals, and the quick lightning round at the end. So because my listeners are entrepreneurs, not just leaders in the field, but also people that want to break into entrepreneurship. They also like to hear about what makes an entrepreneur. So for you, when was that click moment that made you think, yes, I'm going to follow it alone and go down the entrepreneurial path?
Yeah, it's great. I like to think there was some magic light bulb that went off, but it didn't happen like that for me. And I don't suspect it happens for everybody either. I mean, I come from a very seasoned big company background. I spent almost 15 years within PepsiCo, and then I also worked for some mid-sized companies in beverage, and then have the last sort of 10 years been working in small, more entrepreneurial roles. And that's where I really gained my respect for how much an entrepreneur really has to do to get a business off the ground. So, I love how the quick pace of it. I love that every decision that you make in an entrepreneurial business is a really important decision. And so I guess from that aspect, I'd start with, I really love the entrepreneurial sort of atmosphere of a business. For me, I've spent the last 8 years as the president of a protein company that I loved. And I thought at this point in time in my life, I'd love to take all the skills that I've learned and really help many other businesses succeed, and really help these challenger brands really tackle the big corporations and bringing great products to market.
Okay, that sounds great. So along that journey in the corporate world, was there like a mentor or a boss or a colleague that kind of nudged you along this kind of journey? And did they say something that stuck with you until this day?
Yeah, I feel like I'm a great product of incredible bosses who have all become sort of mentors and friends to me. Even back in a large company environment such as Gatorade, a division of Pepsi, where I worked for 9 years, I worked for a number of amazing women, actually, who really encouraged us to think independently and to think big, and not necessarily fall in line, but really be mavericks in the way we think about businesses, and to own the brand like it's ours, right? So I think that was a great lesson, and I've taken that with me everywhere I've gone, to think about these businesses as mine. In the last 8 years, where I've been president of this protein company, I really sat next to a founder, an entrepreneur, a CEO for many of those years. And I learned so much from him about the importance of speed to market, the crispness of decision making, the no fear mentality of making mistakes and being okay with it, and how important it was to really make sure every single person surrounding you is an A player. Because literally in a small business, you're bootstrapping. You don't have room and time for weaklings. So you really need people around you who are going to support the business in the same sort of passion that you are.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I worked in a while within a SaaS business, and the philosophy of the business is fail fast. If you're gonna fail, fail as fast as you can, as many times as you can, to get closer to success. And it's a very agile world we live in. That's cool. Now, I mean, you mentioned you've been in the corporate ladder for quite a while. Is there any particular lesson or takeaway you take from those years into the second seed partners to make it successful?
I'd say I'd probably take lots of lessons in it for me. I think, in this aspect of my life, it's really about passion, where I don't want to do work that I don't believe in. I want to work on brands and products that supports my personal mission of health and wellness or things that are good for you. I want to work with people who are, aggressive but fair-minded, who want to be collaborators. I think the lessons to me are really about the people and the product. And if you surround yourself with those right people, you can be successful in just about anything you do.
That's cool. Well, in terms of second seed partners, what's really working well that you say, yes, we're nailing this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty new to this. It's like I've just sort of started up this entrepreneurial venture myself. So I think the first lesson I will tell you is, what you believe at the beginning is probably not where you're going to end up. Right. There is a lot of figuring things out. You already mentioned if you're going to fail, fail fast. Right. And I think in this world, like I've really got to figure out like what my own positioning is. And for example, I really love early stage businesses. I love that it's like sort of birthing an infant and helping raise that child from a very early age. The problem with that is these people need you, but they don't necessarily have the money to support my business. So I want to help them, but I can't necessarily do it for free. And so my first lesson is probably the people I most can help and want to help are probably not the most apt sort of first group of people I should be going after. And the audience that I probably need to focus more attention on are the people who have had a little bit of success thus far, but need more, more rounding out. So sort of like a 5 million plus kind of business versus a super early stage business.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess you are started, so you know where things could go well. But is there anything in particular that is causing friction in your operations that you'd like to iron out?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's always friction. I think for me is there's a lot of people out there sort of trying to do the consulting thing, if you will, and finding that exact unique position is really important. And I've really got to try to nail that as much as possible. So I think that's number one. Sort of the biggest one I'd say right now is the fact that the kind of businesses I want to be able to help, they don't always have the cash that they need to win and to succeed. And so they want me to come in as, sort of being a fundraiser for them. And I'm happy to introduce them to people and to help them raise funds and write the right decks and tell the right story. But I'm not a fundraiser. I'm a strategist. I'm an executor. I want to help build the business. So I think, everybody sort of wants you to raise money. I want to focus on helping grow the business. I don't want that to be the primary focus for my business.
I understand. I understand. So I guess I like to ask this question because sort of kind of magic, but I guess sometimes it's hard work that needs to happen. But if you had a magic wand, what friction would you remove from second seed partners operations?
Yeah, great question. Again, like I'm just starting out, but I've already figured out that I could be mired in the operational BS, if you will, all day long. I had to learn how to build a website and register my business and get all the sort of systems up and running that will help me, right? That's painful. It's a painful amount of time. So if there was some magic bullet that said, "Hey, here's your little box, go do this little thing and then go concentrate on meeting people and growing your and businesses," that would be awesome. But I've spent a lot of time sort of operationalizing so that I can help people along the way. Yeah, I mean, if you got a business idea, Chris, around creating a magic box for people like me, man, that would have been helpful. I would have saved many, many hours.
Okay. I mean, I actually have ideas, but I need to sometimes understand what would you like to go into the magic box so that I can do the right things. But we can talk about that later at some
Yeah.
other. Now, you mentioned your ICP, like your ideal customer. You say it's someone that is not necessarily early stage, but potential early stage, but with the right turnover of around 5 million. Is there anything else you would like to see in your ideal customer in terms of being able to run with the advice you give them? Is that so? I say turnover, you're looking probably potentially minimum 5 million, perhaps, or maybe a little bit less, but with capital to invest, maybe after the first round of funding. How would you structure that a little bit more consistently if someone is listening and want to come and work with you?
Yeah, I think a couple things, right? One is how stable is their business, right? And we already talked about cash. You think you need this much cash to operate and grow your business, when in reality you need this much cash, right? You can't even see that on the screen probably, but like, as far as my arms will reach, you need as much cash as possible because you're going to make mistakes, right? And there's going to be rainy day needs, things that you didn't expect, legal fees, for example, or deductions that you weren't planning on, right? Those things require cash. Secondly, is the fact that your cost of goods on a business need to be as low as possible. And your expenses need to be even lower to succeed. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, people who are starting out, get really romanced by the idea of spending gobs of money on marketing or on making the greatest product that they can and the most unique packaging that they can out of the gate. But what happens is their margins are low to start. And if your business is built on shaky ground to start, it's not going to get better very easily. And you're not going to make yourself attractive to big investments down the road. So to sum it up, you need cash and you need to really, really minimize your expenses. And if you can be there foundationally, along with a product idea that's unique in its positioning to the market, I think you've got at least the foundation for a recipe for success.
Yeah, sure. So are you a believer then that you have to have a very strong MVP and then just strap and then just go along and then iterate as you go along and then you can start spending more on the fancy stuff afterwards, right?
That's right. I mean, look, very few brands that I've known have started in one place and scaled to 100 million with the exact same product line or packaging or even branding, so to speak. They really made mistakes early. They've corrected those mistakes without burning their business to the ground, and they've been able to learn from it and build a more solid structure. So yeah, I think that's the idea there, is to, not make big mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And to make sure that you're building something solid.
Sure, sure. So I guess almost have like big goals, but start small and iterate as you go along.
That's right. I mean, look, I think, importantly attached to that is, what is your ambition for the business, and don't try to get there too quickly.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of people out there who start out, they maybe have sold a couple $1 million on e-commerce or maybe in one region of the country. And they say, I'm ready for Walmart or I'm ready for Costco when they start calling. And I'll promise you that you're not. You're just not ready for them until you've proven that the model exists in some scale. You need to really invest in I call them concentric circles, right? Grow your business here and make sure it's successful here before you can grow it out here. And that could be geographically, it could be in one channel, it could be to one or two audiences, and making sure that you've established some kind of great baseline before you could expand. Because when you start talking about expanding your business, you're talking about a lot of money. You're talking about huge expenses and resources and people that you may not have planned on, that it's going to take to succeed nationally or at a large scale.
Yeah, yeah. So it seems like you have to take baby steps, focus on the essential before then you start going bigger. Yeah, it makes a lot of
Right.
sense.
I mean, be patient. It's hard to be patient. Be patient, right? Build success, build models that are successful that you can then export elsewhere.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Interesting. Now, from the point of view of second seat partners, if you project yourself into 12 months, what headline would you like to see around Second Seat Partners on LinkedIn or on a magazine or
Yeah,
uh,
all of that just sounds great. Let's go. But I think we'd really like to be, the thoughtful go-to partner for any small to mid-size business. We want to be the first call they make when they're, hitting a wall or where they're trying to figure out how to scale. We want to be there to support them all. I think that my goal would be in the first year to have sort of 5 really solid retained clients that we're helping on a regular basis grow their businesses, being able to develop their strategies and to be able to connect them to the right people to help build their businesses operationally, sales wise, to put in the right people in place if they need it, to build their marketing programs, whatever their business needs are. We want to be their co-pilot in doing so. And I'm hoping that we can do that with at least, sort of 5 regular bit that we're operating on any given time.
yeah, that makes sense. And would you say at this stage you are a little bit agnostic in terms of the vertical, or is there any particular vertical you like to be kind of specializing in? Because you mentioned health and wellness, because I think that's where your passion is. Would you go broader if the demand was there?
Yeah, I mean, of course, like I think there is some benefit to knowing for people in your industry, right? I've been a beverage guy my whole life, and food and beverage are very, very related. They sometimes have some distinctions in distribution, and so there's slight differences there. But I think I'm definitely vertically suited in food and beverage. But channel wise, I've done it all. So e-commerce, really important to growth. How do you use Amazon to grow your business successfully? And I've been able to do that with a great team around me that I've learned from, frankly. How do you, where do you choose to invest in grocery and mass and in up and down the street and things like that? I'd say that those are my areas of expertise, my team's areas of expertise. And we're quite deep there.
I see. I mean, I've had a few chats with people in the alcoholic beverage, and there was one in particular that struck a chord with me because he's got a lot of medals and he's struggling with distribution because he's saying, despite the fact he produces like 10,000 proof gallons a year, he's having difficulties in finding the people to try his product. And it's not because the product is not good, but it's a distribution issue. If he was to come and approach you and say, can you take a second seat here within my company and help me with distribution? What will be your playbook?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'd say what the first thing is like, great tasting products or awards or medals. Those are almost antis right now. Like you can't even start a business without that. I mean, listen, there are enough people who do it, but they shouldn't be starting a business, unless the product tastes great. In the alcohol bev industry, you have an additional barrier, and that's distributors, because you can't distribute directly to consumers. You have to go through a 3-tiered system. So your first customer is the distributor, and you need to win share of influence with that distributor to focus on your product, to make sure that it sits on the truck, to make sure that the merchandisers are creating displays for you in all of the retail outlets that they serve. You're not going to get anywhere without the relationship with the distributor. I would put all of my muscle into that first, because you're never going to reach a consumer without it, right? Make
Mhm.
that distributor your truest partner for success. And I think that's the first place I would start, and don't spare an expense to do that.
Yeah, and I guess that comes down to your philosophy about expanding concentrically. First, focus on the distribution, and then go further, and then you can expand. I suppose. Would you
That's
say
right.
so?
I mean, you need to be their partner. You're going to have to put people in the trucks with their distributors. You're going to have ride-alongs. You're going to have people in the market building displays, doing sampling. You're going to have to put money against marketing and influencers that support the market so that the distributor knows when and if they carry your product into a store that it's going to move quickly.
Yeah.
that's all really expensive. And if you're trying to bite off more than you can chew there, you're not going to be successful.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. So for people like that individual, Jason, I interviewed from Divine Distilleries, or other people out there that want to work with you, how do you actually go about finding you, or how do you go about finding them?
Well, need to do a better job of having them help find me, right? And that's part of me building my business, right? How am I marketing myself? What kind of tools am I putting in place on LinkedIn, through SEO, through AI means, to make sure that I'm in, the first page of results that they're finding when they're looking for help, right? That's part of my journey as an entrepreneur, right? But, we have a website, we have a contact form on there. It says a lot about what we do. And anybody that is just even wants to just have a conversation about how we can help them, we'd love to talk to them. It's not going to cost someone anything. We're going to be honest about whether we're the right people or not. And if not, we'll connect them with others. And, you could find me at www.secondseatpartners.com. And we'd love to hear from you.
Okay. So is there any particular channels you're using other than LinkedIn?
Yeah, right now it's me reintroducing what I'm doing to the market, to my contacts. I have a rich sort of history in the beverage industry, so it's like letting people know what I and my colleagues are doing, reaching out through direct emails, messages, calls to private equity, to VCs, to entrepreneurs of businesses that we count as passion points for us, or where we may be able to help. And I'd say that from a marketing standpoint, the plan for us right now is to create regular content to demonstrate to people that we have a real important voice in helping you grow. And we'll be probably doing that through Substack, through digital newsletters. And I want it to be sort of dynamic in the sense that I want people to be able to contribute to it as well. I want there to be dialogue. And that's why I like Substack as a great sort of vehicle for that, because it's a social media platform that really invites collaboration.
Yeah. I'm actually going to be a bit cheeky because I spoke to you before, and I was going to ask you about some of your passions. And I think there is something that you are building on Substack that people outside just purely on consumer packaged goods can find value. Do you want to share a bit more about that Substack you've been building?
Sure. Part of sort of taking this journey myself, right, is a bit of reflection and a little bit of what's going to make me happy. And so I believe in, just working hard and just grinding is not a healthy way to live, right? As an entrepreneur or any part of any kind of business person, right? So writing has always been a good passion for mine. And I've started a personal Substack called Less Grind, More Joy. And it's about the idea of, really putting your heart into life, right? It's not about not working hard, but it's about working hard passionately, right? And the more we grind, the more we become emotionally fatigued, the more we don't bring our best selves to work or to family or to friendships or whatever that is. So the last 6 months, and actually today is my 6-month anniversary of my first Substack.
Oh, wow.
I've been writing, thank you, saying I should congratulate myself, because doing anything for 6 months without a gun to your head is an accomplishment, right? Like, nobody's forcing me to do this. I'm not getting paid for it, but it's been really fun to write, to sort of muse about life, to be honest and authentic about the things that are concerning me or the things that are driving me forward. So you could find me on Substack at Less Grind, More Joy, or just, search my name. And you'll find some of these. And, I don't think it's necessarily going to help you in business, but I think it's hopefully going to be a motivator for, a good path for life forward.
Yeah. I mean, I know that there is a lot of influencers out there that talk about grinding like there is no tomorrow. And I understand that sometimes if you have a goal, and particularly if you want to have a 100 million or a 50 million pound company, you have to grind. But sometimes I think people in that journey forget about living. And I think living is such a gift that we have. that I find if you just lose yourself in creating that 100 million pound company, you don't enjoy the small moments of life. And I think it has to be a balance. So when you talk about less grinding, more joy, I'm sure that a lot of entrepreneurs out there need to hear that stories, because it's not just about grinding, it's also about living. And I guess the balance has to be there.
That's right. I mean, look, we all know people who have passed away before their time, or who have gotten sick, or who have fallen on really hard times, right? We all, when you're at the top of your game, you feel like nothing can fail you. But the next day, something bad can come. And, what's going to be the legacy you leave behind? It's going to be the relationships you build, your family, your friendships, your contributions to bettering this world, right? You're not going to do that if all you do is think about work and building a business 100 hours a week. And again, like from my perspective, I know that I wasn't bringing my best self to work every day, and so it became, how do I become the best version of myself? And it was about balancing out that grind and that joy. And,
Yeah.
and I think that's a great lesson for sort of, again, for any business person.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I'm going to start wrapping up the podcast because I want to be respectful of your time, and it's very kind of you to share time with me. Now, as the audience are entrepreneurs out there, is there a particular book or podcast that you like to recommend that they can delve into?
Right. Well, you won't be surprised to hear me say this because of what I've just said before, but I like, for me, reading is about nurturing your soul, and those are the kind of things that I believe that you know are the time away from work in a lot of ways. So, I'm not going to vilify anybody for reading or writing a business book and models. I have passion points, and I tend to follow those when I'm reading or listening to podcasts or anything. And those for me are, I've got a passion for World War II. I've got a passion for politics. I've got a, sort of, I'll call it a spiritual awakening, not a godly awakening, but, sort of a cosmic awakening. So, like, for example, there's a great book that I've been reading called Let Your Life Speak. And that's about really following your passions a lot more and listening to yourself. And then, I do love to spend time reading about historical fiction in a lot of ways. It helps sort of bring other times into your life in a very human way. Thinking about how people lived, 80 years ago is really an incredible thing to think about.
Yeah, it's a question of perspective. So there's something that, like, I think I read that somewhere. I'm trying to remember what I read it, but I don't remember the source. But when you talked about let your life speak, we should actually listen more to the whispers of our heart than the noise around us, if that makes sense. Because sometimes we're so busy pursuing what social media tells you should pursue or what the Jonases are doing, and you don't listen to the little whispers of your heart
Love it.
where you need to connect to that little voice, because if you hear it, it has profound things to say. And
That's
sometimes,
right. And like, my example for that has been, like, fitness has always been a big, important part of my life, and I work out regularly. But it's just been in the last 6 months where I have discovered walking, right? And I wouldn't call it walking for fitness. Yes, there's benefits to walking, but I call it mindful walking,
mm,
right? It's walking with a purpose, and the purpose for me being introspection, or being reflective, or thinking through problems. Something about moving and being outside and sort of observing the world and being part of it has really fed my energy in an incredible way, much more so than just about anything I can think of.
yeah, for sure. I mean, there is a lot of practicing around like active meditation, and walking is one of them, where you can walk with a purpose and with mindfulness.
That's right. You know what else? It reminds you of how beautiful the world is in what can otherwise feel like a troubling time, right? We don't live in easy times, and it's easy to be negative and to feel pessimistic. But when you're out on a beautiful sunny day in a park, and you're seeing, people running with their dogs or playing with their kids, or just sitting there talking, it sort of refuels you a little bit.
Yeah. I think there is someone called Tish Han. and he talks about practicing meditation and walking meditation. He had a retreat center, I think, in France called the Plum Village, which I think still is around. And he talks about using daily chores and walking as a way of practicing mindfulness. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
that's
it's something I believe in. Hopefully, I can do for the rest of my life.
yeah, that's awesome. Now, in terms of imparting a golden nugget for someone starting the entrepreneurial journey, what would you like to impart?
You know, I like to say, first of all, congratulations. If you've created something, anything, you've done something that most people have never done. So great job. But, now that you've done that, really protect yourself, protect your interests by being smart about it, right? Make sure you're surrounded by the right people. Make sure you're not overspending. Make sure you're bootstrapping here. Make sure your idea is unique enough. Think about, is there a reason for your business to be in the market? What unique offering are you bringing to people? If you start there, you're a leg ahead already. And then, of course, I say it and I hate harping on it, but cash, 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 cash. You need money to grow a business. It's like you need water for a plant. It's not going to flourish without it.
Yeah, cash flow is definitely king. And I guess this brings me to the last question, because I normally ask this question around passion, but I'm going to change slightly. So, when the tough or when the going gets tough, how do you keep motivation tank full? Well, what keeps you pushing forward?
Great question. It's been of recent that I've sort of reminded myself of this, and that is the importance of who's sitting in your second seat, if you will. I have spent the last couple months really re-engaging with people I care about, who can fuel me, who know me, who can sit at a bar and have a cocktail with me, or sit at a coffee shop and have a coffee with me, who can take my calls and talk me off the ledge, or inspire me to go on if I'm having a hard day. So I think it's that network around you. Hopefully, people have a network around them. I am the richest man on earth when it comes to the people around me. I know that. I'm very fortunate. I'm also proud of the relationships that I've built. So for me, it's leaning on other people. It's been the saving grace for me through this journey.
Yeah, that's actually quite, I think, important to remind people out there, particularly when they're close to the ledge, that there's always people around that care about them, even if they don't think there is. And in particular, in this day and age, a lot of men sometimes find that it gets tough, and they are sometimes too proud to seek out friendships and support from their loved ones, but they should never be afraid to reach out, because people around them care, and sometimes you don't think that. And I think it's important to remind us of all of that.
Absolutely. Like we don't do anything ourselves. If you unless you're a narcissist, if you're honest with yourself, that it takes a village to build a person.
Uh,
And you need to take the energy in from them, but you also need to feed the energy back to those people so that you guys keep supporting each other.
wow, perfect. This is a great way to bring this podcast to an end. So, Andy, this was a great conversation. Thank you very much for pulling up a chair at the operator's table.
Absolutely.
So, you've already shared some of your socials. Is there anything else about your mission or anywhere that people can find you if you want to share before we close?
No, I mean, again, like secondseatpartners.com is a great way to find me. You could find me on LinkedIn, of course. And if you like to read my musings to inspire you, search up on Substack, Less Grind, More Joy. And hopefully, if I can inspire you for a couple minutes in your life, you'll be that much richer.
Perfect. Thank you. So,
Thank you.
for our listeners, if you enjoyed today's episode, follow the show and share it with a friend who loves the operator's journey. Today's guest was Andy Horrow from Second Seat Partners. I'm Chris, and this is the operator's table, where we meet the people who keep business moving. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris.